Hi, and welcome to Chasing Energy, where we provide insights to fuel a life worth living. This is episode number 8 with Callen McGibbon. Callen is a strength and conditioning coach. He has started 3 different companies. We'll talk about 2 of those in depth during this interview. He's gotten 3 gold medals as a strength coach for Canada, as well as multiple gold medals as a member of the Canada Special Olympics powerlifting team. Here's the thing. When you listen to this interview, I'm going to tell you that I need you to make a deal with me, and that is this. If you find that the interview is dragging out a little too slow and going a little too technical, you need to skip to about 26 minutes in when Callen gets into some of his deep insights. Callen he's not particularly charismatic or outspoken. He's very methodical. And so the first 25 minutes or so of the interview is a lot about his background, and even there's some stuff sprinkled in there of how he got to where he is and how he's even coached some of his athletes. However, the true gem, the true nugget of this interview starts at about 25 to 28 minutes in. And I can say that with all honesty and conviction that this interview, out of the interviews I have done on this podcast, has made the biggest difference in my personal life. And I say that because I had given Callen some homework assignments during our pre-call and said, hey, could you come back with some really good takeaways for the audience? To say that Callen knocked it out of the park would be an understatement. So much so that how I'm trying this whole thing where at the end of the interview, I try something that the guest told me and I give you a little bit of feedback. In the case of Callen, I can't give you feedback on all the things he suggested because there are so many, and the few that I have done have given me great results. And as an outcome of that, as a result, I have now changed my morning routines. I'm getting up earlier. I've changed the way that I look at mornings now as, just having time to sleep in a little bit later to really taking control of my day. Callen, thank you so much for sharing with me and the audience what you do to achieve excellence in your life and how you train athletes to do the same. Callen McGibbon, thank you for joining me today at Chasing Energy. How are you, man?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
So, Callen, you have quite the little dossier here, including some gold medals for helping the strength and conditioning team, and you have a great story that I think our audience needs to hear. Let's start by telling people a little bit about how you started in construction.
Yeah. So I was working. I was working as just a laborer for a construction company that built sewage and water treatment plants. Not generally from new, mostly like retrofitting them. And that's kind of where I got started out of school. And I was a hard worker, so kind of made up the ranks pretty fast and, got a company truck. So even though I was building sewage plants and walking around in sewage most of the time, I didn't really necessarily think it was bad because I was young and, I was making good money at the time. So I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So that was going pretty great, actually. And I was working at a sewage treatment plant in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, called Lakeview Sewage Plant. And we were working on this tank. And so these tanks are really long, like almost like a football field. And there's air that pipes down from the surface down these pipes and goes down to the bottom and aerates these tanks. And then it breaks up the heavy material, right? And then basically they turn off the air and then all the material sinks to the bottom and the clear water's on the top and they take it off. So I'm working with this gentleman on a raft floating in here, and we're cranking up we were doing up fittings on these big, huge pipes. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the building, there's like a doorway where this like big crane would come out on like a monorail, and it had like this big bucket underneath it, would drop it down into the tanks and grab all the sediment off the bottom. And we're working, and I just heard this and I turned and looked to the end, and I thought I saw something, but I wasn't sure. And I was like, I just had this gut instinct. I'm like, something's wrong, something just happened. And so I tapped the guy on the shoulder. He was from Newfoundland. We called him the Bye. So I tapped Bye on the shoulder. I'm like, yo, we got to get back to the grit room. Like something just happened. So we run into the grit room and run around looking around, and we come around the corner, and I see this guy laying on the ground, and he was doing maintenance on this crane, and he wasn't tied off, and he had fallen off, and he fell probably about 30 feet onto a concrete floor on his head. And there was blood everywhere, and it was like this dark blood. I remember it to this day, clear as day. And it was like the darkest stuff I've ever seen. Like I was like, oh my God. And I ran up to him, and he kind of looked like he was choking. So I didn't know what to do. And so all the stuff I did was completely wrong, but it was intuitive, right? Like, so I kind of reached in his mouth and I pulled his jaw down, and he started gasping. I'm like, okay, like he was choking on his tongue, he was unconscious, whatever. So then I yell, like, call 911, call 911. And then my friend ran away, they called 911, he came back, and then we just kept, trying to just kind of keep him breathing by keeping his mouth open. I had it pulled open. And the fire department got there, and they said, like, what's his name? And I'm like, I think his name's Scott, because I said it on his shirt, like, Scott, like, you don't know him? No, I don't know him. They just keep telling him he's okay, keep telling him he's okay. So I did, and then a couple seconds later, they told me to go outside. And then later on that night, I got a call that he died. He was like 27 years old with 2 little kids. And I lasted like 2 more weeks. I told my boss, like, just lay me off, man. I don't want to do this anymore.
Now, I remember when we discussed this, you talked about how it was traumatic enough you felt like you had to get out of the industry. You asked to be laid off. And from there, if I'm not mistaken, you got into CPR, right?
I did. I was really upset that I didn't know what to do, and so my initial idea was that I would, my plan was I was going to become a first aid and CPR instructor. And I would, buy a bunch of vans, hire some people, and teach first aid and CPR on construction sites in the job site trailers, so that, construction workers wouldn't have to leave the site. We could do it at lunch hours, spread it out over a couple of lunch hours and get through everything we needed to get through and offer that service on site. So I started taking first aid and CPR to become an instructor, which in those courses were taught like from 4 o'clock on. So I would just basically, I grew up with a single mom in a trailer park. And so we didn't have access to anything. So we all, like, my mom just had fitness in my life from as a little munchkin, and we always exercised. So I kind of turned to exercise, and I would go to the gym kind of all day. And then I would take first aid and CPR at night. And I got my instructor's certificate.
Yeah, and from there, that led you to a gym meetup with someone who was highly qualified and who had talked to you about, hey, you have the natural helper mentality. The only requirement is that you're CPR certified, right?
Yeah, people ask me, like, how did you end up in this career? They always wonder if I was like a university grad or like a PhD or something. And like, yeah, well, so I took first aid and CPR because I was kind of a bystander of a construction accident. And I met up with this guy while I was working out in the gym named Ian Walling. And for your listeners, you can Google Ian Walling. He was Mr. All Natural Universe in 1998. I think he won again too, shortly after that. But he was working out. He happened to be working out in the gym I was training at. And we just kind of started talking, and I love people. And so kind of start talking to him. And so he's like, you should become a trainer. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, well, I teach people how to work out. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And that's when it kind of came full circle. I said, what do you need to become a trainer? And he said, you need first aid and CPR. It just happened to have it. So that's when the kind of fairy tale started.
Yeah. So it's been 25 years now, right, that you've been a personal trainer?
Yeah, I kind of got into training when, the industry was pretty much solely influenced by bodybuilding, I would say, at like the mass level, right? And I got into it, and I just was in a really gym. Like the gym I was located at the time was called Fitness West. It's been bought out now. It's named something different, but I think it's called Vision 24. And so, there's a gentleman that worked out there named Joey Peacock, who happened to be like the Canadian, like all natural powerlifting champion. And there was Mark McCoy, who was a 200-meter Olympic gold medalist for Canada in the hurdles. And and Ian, of course, Mr. All Natural Universe. And I was there all day long, just hanging out, working out. So I was watching them, like how they would kind of, each style kind of train so differently, right? Like Mark would do like plyometrics in the parking lot, other things. And then Joey was doing all his powerlifting stuff, and Ian was doing bodybuilding. And so I was just kind of watching them all, and just like, we should just be combining some of this stuff like together and doing it like with our clients, Ian, because at that point I'd had a couple clients, and I was like, I'm going to just do bodybuilding with this client. Like, they're not just interested in that. Like, right. So I started to kind of pull stuff from other places, and my career just kind of started to take off. But at that point, there wasn't really like a functional strength conditioning program around. Kinesiology really hadn't expanded into what it is now. Like, it's, now you couldn't even work for me unless you had like a kinesiology degree. Like, it's, I'm dating myself, but this is a long time ago, right? Things were kind of completely different than they are today.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot's changed.
A lot's changed.
So I want to know specifically what you know today after being in this industry for so long. What are you mentioned plyometrics and a little bit of kinesiology and a little bit of powerlifting. What is it that makes you unique about your approach that you offer people when you evaluate somebody and you look at them and you say, I'm going to look at you. Do you first say, what are your goals? And then you look at how much of these different methodologies can help them get there?
I think, like, obviously people's goals are like a critical component, because they're a piece of what's intuitively driven them to outsource some type of health. So if we're just keeping this in the context of a trainer, right? Like, someone comes to you and they're like, they're obviously already a little bit motivated, and they've probably got something somewhere they've seen or felt, and they've kind of set like I want to be different. They may not have it clear yet, but they do want to be different than they are right now with respect to their state of health, right? And they outsource somebody. And so I've always believed in like reflection day or an assessment day. Like I've built my entire career on assessing. Like I never, ever, ever, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. And you owe it to a client to assess them, because you owe it to yourself to make sure that what you're doing is working. Like, assessments are, I think, where a lot of trainers make it, like they stumble on this is they don't realize that the assessment's a 50-50 deal. Like, it's almost more about you than it is about them. Because if you really care about the outcome of this person, I really want to know if what we're doing is helping them. And if I'm in a constant state of varying without rechecking, I'm really unsure as to what it is that's really unlocking their joy for falling in love, or their ability to fall in love with moving, right?
You can't manage what you can't measure.
Yeah. And so I would start, assessing. And in the beginning, I would put in like, depending on their level of movement competency. But when they came to me, I would be like, what? In the beginning, I would be like, okay, one of the things we're going to do in an hour is going to be a constant. So if I saw them twice a week, one thing in an hour was going to be a constant. We were going to do that, on day one, we were going to do it on day, and everything else was going to be a variable. I wanted to expose them to as many things as I could to get their nervous system expanded so they understood all kinds of movements. So when I was ready to maybe do some form of progressive overload, their body knew how to do everything. And in the beginning, they're going to get results by just exposing them to a broad range of activity. And the faster they learn all the movements in the gym, the quicker you can find out which ones they like and which ones they don't. So the first 4-week plan is really one constant I would do, or maybe like 2 constants in an hour, and like 8 or 9 variables, right? Meaning it's something that might change each time I see them. And the further they got down that client trainer relationship with me, the more constants I put in. So, the first 4 weeks, it might be, let's just say 80-20, 80% variables, 20% constants. And then when we would reassess, right? We'd be like, okay, well, where are we? Like, what did we win at? What got better? and we celebrate because you got to get the dopamine cycle involved in this, right? Like you gotta celebrate and then create more motivation and more drive for something else. Like,
So give me an example of celebrating.
so celebrating would be like, I would have like a fun workout day where I would do stuff with them, or we would do something like we play a game, right? Like just something to celebrate that when we had an assessment and we got results, we would celebrate in a healthy way. Like not, hey, I'm going to take you to Dairy Queen. Like it was, let's celebrate, like today, let's play a game, right? So we'd play some kind of like form of some silly game I would make up at the gym or something, like do 5 burpees and then like find a dog, hide dumbbells in the gym. And we would play like basically like scavenger hunt. You'd have to find a dumbbell, bring it back. Just a random concept idea that was just fun and we would laugh. And then we would spend like half of the session just stretching. Mm-hmm. And that's what we would do to celebrate. And you create fun, right? And then we're like, okay, like assessment was great. Like, what do you want to do now? And I approached the goals thing, but I was very protective of letting them set goals because I'm hoping that's changing now, but I don't really think people had a very good understanding of when, again, I'm dating myself, when I was kind of when I came into this industry, I don't think they were educated on exactly how to set goals and what was a realistic expectation. So if they came in and were really goal driven, I would kind of talk them out of it from the standpoint of just letting them learn first about what's actually achievable. Like what can we actually do here together in the next 4 weeks so you don't quit?
Yeah, I heard a phrase the other day by James Clear, and it said goals are for people who want to achieve a specific victory. Processes are for people who want to live at a higher level. So in this case, getting past I want to put on the most common gym goal is I need to put on 10 more pounds of muscle.
Sure.
That is one of the most common things I've ever heard inside of a gym. And as you get older, it's I want to have energy, I don't want to be in pain, and I want to live past 70. That's pretty much like what the goals are starting to migrate to versus, man, I wish I could have 10 more pounds of muscle. So you talk about how you build that process, right? How do you get them to think different? Give me an example of someone that you specifically worked with and how you were able to get them to a different level with this mindset.
Okay, like I can give you like hundreds.
Well, do you want to mention someone who won a medal? That might be a good story.
Yeah. So like I've been pretty fortunate enough to train like some of our like Canada's, best athletes. So I've worked with Rebecca Johnson, who still actually plays on our women's Olympic hockey team. And that's how I'm connected to the gold medals, because I've been the regional strength conditioning coach for the women's national hockey for like a decade now. And I've had 2 girls that have come through me that have gone on and won gold medals with the team. So I guess how in particular, like bringing, I guess, when I think about my experience with Rebecca, maybe, she's one of the most like neurologically gifted athletes I've ever worked with in my life. Mm-hmm. There's really nothing that I could put in front of her that her nervous system didn't figure out in like 5 reps.
Yeah. And I don't want you to lose your inertia there, but I do want to ask you, do you feel like that's something that has to be developed at a young age?
Yes, I do.
I think so too. I don't think you can pick up I've heard this, I've been asked this question on the podcast before, but I've had people ask me, can someone just pick up a professional sport at the age of 20? And I was like, nervous system development is very tricky to do at an older age. There are certain sports like professional rowing where you might be able to power through it. But back to your story, she's one of the most, you said what in terms of being aware?
Yeah, like she's one of the most neurologically aware, gifted athletes I've ever worked with. Her body's natural ability to just understand a movement, and quickly master it is like nothing I've ever nothing I've ever experienced before. It's quite fascinating. But a particular example of, I guess, getting her or an experience with her where getting them to buy into the process, I think being able to show them that, or particular Rebecca, show her exactly how constants inside a program at her level were what was needed in order to kind of like progress little micro skills.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. Constants. Give me a literal example of something being constant in her training that you said, what, do this for 3 months every day, 10 minutes a day, or what?
Yeah, so I guess at the highest elite level, like you're kind of done that variable stage that you start with someone that is just beginning to move, and then you constantly remove these variables with more constants. And the higher you progress in like in a physical pursuit, so this is a very extreme one because it's like an Olympic team, there's less and less variables and more constants in your programming, because you have to have a very diligent, focused attention on a specific thing you want to improve, because the improvements are so small. They're so
Yeah, you're fighting at the elite level. You're fighting for 0.5%.
Yeah, and if you don't have programming that has a massive amount of constant energy, right? So instead of the 80-20 like I described earlier in new person, like 80% variable, 20% constant, it's like the other way around, right? It's like 80% constants, 20% variables. Maybe your warm-up might change a couple of times, or you might do a new cool down, but the actual workout plan itself is the same one you did last Tuesday because it's day 3 and you have to do it again. And because you want to specifically hone and drive in that one specific skill that you're working on within that program. Maybe it's like, you're trying to improve power and explosiveness because you want to change the first 3 steps, right? You want to improve the first 3 strides on the ice, or, change of direction and first 3 steps on change of direction. So you're very, very honed in on a specific training program. To be able to show that return, you have to put all that energy into it. So that's what I mean by constants at the extremist of level. So for Rebecca, it was like, constants would get, so frustrating because you're trying to beat the same thing, every Tuesday type deal, and trying to do this progressive overload and get better. With obviously there's planned deload cycles in there, so you're not burning out people and recovery times and stuff. But I'm just talking about the upside of it, right? When she would then, we would do an assessment and she sees that growth, right? That all that work pays off. That's when you kind of like win them over, because they realize that all that struggle, all that hard work is actually paying off towards that one.
And in the case of her seeing this has paid off, what did that look like for her? What was the specific metric that she said, wow, this is working?
Well, it would just be like where we would test like a 40-yard dash, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Just like a 40-yard.
I know what you mean in terms of, especially with coaching a runner, for example, where you're aiming that you do these things so that 5 weeks later when they do a time trial, they're a minute and a half faster. And that's where you show that all this stuff is paid off. I do want to talk about a couple things here because you've had 3 companies.
Yeah.
And one story in particular, the health food store, I'd like you to mention your tipping point of when you said, this isn't where I belong. This isn't. And one of the themes that you have in your career here, going from blue collar worker who tried to help someone who was injured, CPR, to strength and conditioning coach, to health food store owner, to gym owner, to software developer, is you look at people and you go, it seems like it starts with a very altruistic, I care about you. I want you to live a better life, right? When you think about someone who is a strength and conditioning coach, it's saying, I care about you. I want you to do this without getting hurt and get you to the next level. Very much a support person, right? So tell us, in the case of the health food store, when you decided that wasn't the best avenue for you to help people.
Yeah. So we moved up to Northern Ontario. My wife and I, we opened up a health food store, and we had opened up a training company at the same time. So we were kind of running both. And And I was working at the health food store. You asked me this question. It was great, and because it made me reflect on this moment that I actually literally I hadn't thought about for years as to why we got out of the health food, like the retail space of how owning a health food store. And I was working in the health food store, and this customer had come in, and they had a list of items that a visit from their naturopath had asked their naturopath to ask them, listen, go out and get all of these things. And they came in. I have this list, and I'm walking through the store, and like an hour goes by, and they have lots of questions, right? Which is great. The questions are great. So, asking me about this vitamin and that vitamin and this mineral and why they're taking this enzyme and blah, blah, blah. And I'm answering all the questions. I'm doing everything. And then we get up to the counter, and I got like these 5 jars on the counter. And specifically, it was like a B vitamin complex and inositol. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong now. I can't remember. It's INSOTIL. It's the balanced blood sugars. And so I got all this stuff on the counter, and she's like, "Oh, do you have groceries by any chance?" And I said, "Yeah." She's like, "I need a loaf of bread." So I go to the freezer, and I open it up, and I grab some Ezekiel bread. And listeners know what Ezekiel bread is. It's bread.
Sprouted grains.
Sprouted grain bread. So like the enzymic process, it's very nutrient rich because obviously the seed has been germinated, so it's alive. So it's like eating a sprout, right? So it's
which Ezekiel is a reference to how in the Bible they say to sprout your grain.
Yeah, so it's just a fantastic product, right? I think at the time we were selling it was like $5.65, right? Which was, and we were buying it for $5.05. So we were making 60 cents on this loaf of bread, right? And I put it on the counter, and it happened to land upside down, and the food label was facing up. And I looked at it, and I looked at all the vitamin and mineral profile on the loaf of bread, and I looked at this little old lady across from me, and I was like, you know what? Everything that's in these vitamins is in this loaf of bread. And I'm like, just buy the loaf of bread. And I made 60 cents, and I was with her for like an hour, right? And the world is a place that we've wrapped financial exchange between one another around it, right? We got rid of bartering. We decided to go with cash. So that's a process that we all live in. And so I was like, oh, geez. So I got home, and I said to my wife, I'm like, we got to get out of this business. Like we have no place in it unless we're willing to buy all the health food stores in Northern Ontario and do volume. That we have no place in this, and not for us as people. I mean, there's people that own health food stores that are great at it, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it for us. It just was it wasn't for me. I couldn't do it, right? Like it wasn't for me. I'm just like, I'm out.
So from there, let's talk about your other business, which was Healthy Living.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
And finding joy in movement and nutritional testing. That's 2 of the differentiators that you offer, correct?
Yeah. So I was actually running my company at a university in Northern Ontario called Laurentian University. And I ran Healthy Living, my company there, for 15 years. Actually, it was COVID that caused us, because the institution locked down, and I was like, okay, well, I can't just lock down. I got to keep going. We got all these people that are coming to visit us, because we rented space from them. I had physiotherapists and massage therapists, and, I had sports psychologists, and I built a pretty significant company and team at this point, right? And 15 years. And the university was a fantastic partner to be with over the 15 years. They were great. So I built this company around basically these principles of training that I had identified, and unlocking the joy of movement, and using an understanding of nutrition from the health food store as a way to talk to people about their food habits. And it grew Healthy Living, over 15 years, and managed to, work with some pretty phenomenal folks. My actual, one of my best friends today plays in the NHL, and I've been a strength coach for years. And his name's Nick Foligno. He just got traded to the Boston Bruins. He was with Columbus. He was their captain for a bunch of years, and then he got traded to Toronto for the attempted playoff run last year, and then now he's in Boston. And him and I, kind of opened another company, which we won't, we talk about later, but we opened.
I'll go right ahead, because it's leading us into rep performance.
So then him and I started a technology company, like a fitness technology company, that's trying to bring an individualized pathway into phys ed. So kids can learn physical movement skills, like yoga, meditation, all the skills you would need to be physically fit. And I'm going to use the word fit to encompass like meditating or, doing yoga or.
Yeah, various dimensions. So you have psychologically fit, mentally fit, spirit, all these different parameters.
For sure. And so we started like a company. We started a company together, a startup, and we started building a technology company to help phys ed teachers, better equip their students with these these fitness skills for life, right?
Yes. And it goes, when we discussed rep performance, and I was specifically, we won't get into the details now, but I was asking you, like, what does the AI do that's different? And it actually goes back to what you said a few minutes ago, which is talking about assessing, right? Assessing versus guessing. And that's what the software does. It says, I'm constantly assessing you. I'm looking at where you're growing. I'm looking where we need to develop you. And it makes it very easy for, say, a teacher who has 30 or 50 or 100 students to kind of keep track on an individualist basis.
For sure.
I'm sorry, individuals basis.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like, to keep it really on this, to get into the AI side is probably crazy. And plus we need one of my developers here. But yeah, like that's you articulated perfectly. That's the goal, right? Is how can you have 50 kids that all are in different stages of their lives, right? Like, some kids hit peak height velocity earlier than others. So, or forms of puberty. Okay. And, like you could have two kids in class the same age that one of them is like 4 feet tall, one of them is like 6 feet tall, right? At 15 years of age. And how can you individualize something for both of them with a 10-minute prep time that enables them both to be successful at their own speed, right? So that's the thing that we spent the last, few years building.
I love it. Getting it in, permeating that into the educational industry and giving them state-of-the-art tools, moving past the clipboard and the, number 2 pencil with the button.
Yeah.
So you have 4 kids.
I do.
And so I want to, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, what does your training look like during the week, and how do you maintain the various levels of balance between your physical, emotional, family, and spiritual?
It's like time management. But 100%, like between the gym is growing like crazy and staff, and the tech company's growing like crazy, and my
well, that's work stuff. I want to know specifically from your training, like what is a week of training?
Like for me? Well, I am on the cold shower routine, so I wake up at 4 a.m.
You're in Canada, so I imagine your cold showers are a lot colder than most people.
Yeah, exactly.
I can tell you that living here in the South, and you turn the water on as cold as it'll go during 8 months of the year, it's really not that big a deal.
Okay, yeah. So
maybe during like November through February, it's a little chilly. It's certainly a little chilly, but outside of that, it's not what you would consider a cold shower. So you get some of that. I take it you do that to get like a metabolism boost for the day?
I started obviously like going through the cold therapy research stuff through, I got hooked up on that stuff through a Dr. Andrew Huberman. I listened to his podcast.
He's great. Huberman Lab.
Yeah, and then he mentioned Dr. Andy Galpin, and then I started research because he does a lot of cold therapy research. And I kind of got in that spot, and then I learned a bunch from them. And I originally started.
What's your cold ritual? Is it like you turn it on as cold as you start with hot? Do you go to cold?
I just start purely with cold, and it's 2 minutes, and I just stand in there and I get all the glamorous skin. So palms of my hands, my face, bottom of my feet are the main points you got to get, right? And then I get in there, spend 2 minutes, then get out. And it's the very first thing I do. Like I get out of bed.
So you never turn it back on hot when you're done. You just get out.
I just get out. It's cold. And I originally did it for like the metabolic and immune responses. And I got to be honest, after about, I guess it's been 2 years this February of every day, it's not really about that anymore. It's more about like just starting my day with some mental strength, because there's a lot of days that I really just don't feel like doing it. And I think it's really good to like just push yourself to do something that like you really don't necessarily feel like doing. And it's only 2 minutes. So like, how can you not stick it out for 2 minutes, right? And that just sets my mindset for the whole entire day. And so that's what I do. And then I do 25 minutes, 30 minutes of yoga. And then I do 15 minutes of meditation. And then I spend an hour on my education. So from 5 till 6, I learn anything from
5 till 6. Holy hell, Callen. What time are you getting up for all this,
at
man?
4. At 4. Yeah. And then from 5.
No wonder you have to have a cold shower, man.
Yeah. And then I do a grateful list on my phone, which I've been doing for 3 years now. I write 5 things down. I try to do it every day. I almost get it every day. And then I just do education. And while I'm listening to something, while I'm making myself smarter, I make my food for the, and I'm out the door. I'm gone and I'm at the office, get the gym going, get some clients going, and then I'm on my tech.
Any weight training or running or anything
So
like
then
that?
I work out usually at noon. I'm a lunchtime workout person. So I've been training a really, really long time. So I wouldn't necessarily give everybody where I'm at right now, but I do it on a month. So basically I have like a book. I'll show you right now. Right. So I got these books. I got like hundreds of these. And what I do is I do a evaluation over the amount of days in the month. So for me, I'm always trying to get to between 65 and 70% of the month I've had training days. So that means in a 30-day month, I'm looking to try to get like anywhere between 18 and like 22 workouts in a 30-day month. Yeah. That way I don't really stress out. Like if I get really busy with work or have to travel and I'm supposed to do day 1 on Tuesday, it doesn't matter to me. Like if I'm at day 18 in the month and I've only got 9 workouts in, I'm like, okay, next week I got to find a way to get 5 because I got to I'm not going to make it to my end of the goal. I got a goal every month to be, 18 to 24 workouts over 30, 31 days. So that's my overall structure. And then with respect to particular training points, I like to train like highly athletic. So I have like 5 or 6 interval days where I cycle between 400 meters down to 400s, 200s, 100s, 50s, even like 10s and 20s. So I have a couple of interval days where I'm doing those intervals from the standpoint of looking for a cardiovascular gain. And then I'll do intervals another time where I'm doing those intervals with respect to looking for a performance gain. So I'm doing them with 5 to 10 minutes rest, right?
Right. Okay. That's what I was going to ask you was when you. Okay.
And then I do weights. I cycle between power days where I'm trying to increase my strength. And then I have another day where I would just do like a general circuit. And then I have like functional training days where I do a lot of mobility work, bent presses, Turkish get-ups, snatch, all
those Turkish get-ups.
movements that are like very functional, like med ball lifts, like heavy stones, anything that has like anything that's like a high transferable skill to like natural movements, what I would call like a functional training day.
I think, and that Turkish get-up is definitely transferable to a lot of things.
Two-hand anyhows.
So, yeah, there you go. What was the other one? I'm sorry.
Two-hand anyhows. I do a lot of those too.
What is it two-hand anyhow?
I've heard actually from, I think it was Paul Check, who was told me about, I heard at a conference one time that a two-hand anyhow was kind of like the original beginning of weights. And basically you take 2 objects, and you have to take one of those objects and get it over top of your head. And then you have to go and get the second object while that object is over top of your head, and then lift it up and put it over your head. And I don't know whether it's just gym talk or whatever, but the story I think I heard was that was kind of like the beginning of format.
Yeah, I'm looking on Wikipedia, and it's these old black and white photos of your circus powerlifters.
And they would do it before that point, they would do it, I guess, in order to maybe solve land disputes where, they had 2 people in a field and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to pick that up, put it on my head. I'm going to grab that and put it on my head. If you can't do it, then I win, right?
Okay, so the definition of a two-hand anyhow is the goal is to lift as much weight overhead with 2 hands and 2 separate weights in any method. That's the Wikipedia definition.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it today. So I do two-hand anyhows quite frequently. Actually, I really enjoy the movement, so I do those a lot. So I have a mixture, and I kind of rotate through that, right? And I usually set myself up in 16-day programs. So I have 16 workouts. And as soon as I've repeated those 16 workouts 3 times each, so I go from 1 to 16, and then I repeat it 1 to 16, then repeat it 1 to 16, and then I change it.
I'm going to ask you to share some samples of this program, not just for my selfish reasons, because I need to change things up, but maybe someone who's listening is like, let me get a sample of what this guy is doing, because it is actually, it's refreshing for me. I get stuck in my routines and I'm always willing to try something new. And I've told you on our call last time, I'm definitely dealing with some lower back stuff. So I need to really develop my core, but that's a different topic entirely. We have the question I know you were preparing for, which was, takeaways for our audience, right? On sustainable energy. Callen, what do you want to tell them?
Okay, so you had asked me, and you know what? It was such a cool question to ask me, and it was just the way you articulate. You said, "Listen, I don't want you to answer now. I want you to take your time and just think about something that you can give to the audience, right? Like I'm up in Canada, you're down southern United States. Like I just want to try to give your audience something that they can hopefully change their lives and not change it dramatically, but just put yourself in a higher state of energy, which is kind of the name of your show, right? Chasing energy. Like just put yourself in a higher state of energy. And I really thought about it. So it was really good on your part. Like, thanks. It was good. And so I thought about it. And so I came up with a couple. And first one I would say that I'd give your audience is, get up an hour earlier than you have to. Like, and in that hour, like, don't go on your phone, don't go on your computer, don't do anything, because I can tell you right now that inside that hour, whatever thoughts you have are what you're supposed to be doing with your life right now. And I can't tell you that. And no matter how educated I am, how much experience I have, I don't know what your body knows about you. And you just got to dedicate the time to yourself, and you got to do it in the morning before all those thoughts and days and things and interruptions and stuff start. You just got to get up an hour before you have to, and you have to deal with your own self for an hour. The only thing you're allowed is a paper and a pen, and you do that and do it every day. And that single-handedly is, you're going to have thoughts of things that you should be doing or that you should be doing, and they're going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to go through it, and that will instantly put you in a higher energy state instantaneously.
Okay. So wake up early, an hour early, and no distractions. None. You be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and have the pen and paper, because this is your chance to get your pure thoughts for the day before everything else has polluted your mind and thoughts and obligations.
And you're going to find out what's bothering you, right? Is it the fact that you're not exercising? Is it really bothering you? If it really is, then you're going to come up with a plan, like for change. You're going to want to make change. And if it's that, I'm burnt out, then, maybe you're going to start looking into doing meditation and yoga for yourself. But you need that. And you don't need to start with a cold. You don't need to start with all that junk, right? Like, that's later down the road. Like, you just need to start there. That's like the number one thing I think that I would say. And the second thing I would say for you to do is, like, work out with kids. And if you don't have kids, that's cool. It doesn't matter. But put yourself in some environment where you can work out with kids. And if you don't know how to exercise, it doesn't even matter. Like, just go work out with kids, because, like,
when you say work out with kids, what do you mean? Go to the gym, go to a playground with them? What do you generally?
I mean,
because I assume you're talking about allowing yourself to do fun neurological adaptation.
Yes. Like, and we've been highly influenced by sport. There's so much reward in sport and resources and let's just call it out, like, so much money potential. And, we tend to push, like, the sport idea. And listen, I made a massive amount of my career off sports. So, like, I'm not saying it's not great. I'm just saying that 99% of people don't play competitive sports past high school. So let's really put it into perspective here. So if I was going to give people advice on what to do, I think you need to make time to go and exercise in an environment with kids. And if you have your own kids, don't rely on sport as a way to engage physical activity in their life. Because if they stop, then what skills have they learned that can keep them healthy for the rest of their lives? And
I like that, because, there's bad baseball season's over. Doesn't mean we don't do anything now. We always have something to keep in motion, keep us moving. We're not designed to just move for 4 months out of the year.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if you put kids in it, you start to you pick up how much fun they have, and you realize that it's not work. Because when you go exercise with kids, they have a riot. They love it. Now, and you can see that, and you can see like, geez, maybe my perception of this was all wrong. This is a blast. They intuitively know it's fun because they intuitively know it's good for them. So the second thing, whether you got to volunteer or you got to do it with your own kids, but you got to influence kids in the right direction, and you got to feed off their energy, because this whole chasing energy thing, right? You got to feed off their energy.
Yeah.
And
well, you and I both have kids that are available, which I would almost argue that your advice about the getting up an hour early is actually more important when you have kids, because if you don't have kids, you probably have a quiet hour in the morning regardless. But getting up an extra hour early is probably the only time you're going to have in the day to be by yourself.
Pretty much.
I can certainly speak to that.
I can't. So my house is bananas once they all start waking up. Like,
Callen, tell people where they can look up more about Rep Performance, and maybe it's right for their educational system, and maybe they want to learn more about you.
If they want to learn more about me, I'm not really plugged into the social media thing very well, but I do have LinkedIn.
And I'll put a link to your profile in the show notes here. I take pretty meticulous notes.
You can find me there, and if you wanted to, find out about Rep Performance and what we're doing in the world right now, then you just go to our website, which is repperformanceapp.com, and it's 1P. So it's REPPERFORMANCE app.com. And you can check us out and read what's going on and see what we're doing. And I think there's connections there as well. Like, you could obviously reach out to myself. You could put an email, you could put an inquiry in there that you want to talk to me, and someone will get it to me, and I can reach out and talk to people about whatever it is that they want to talk about that's all health related.
Absolutely. Callen, thank you for sharing your time today and giving us all this information. We really appreciate you. Keep it going, man.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. It's really great, and I'm grateful for the time. So thanks for.
So as I mentioned at the start of this podcast, he gave away several tidbits that I have been incorporating, including getting up extra early, doing some stretches in the morning, meditating, keeping a journal, all those things that we see high performers do and think, no, I'll just choose the snooze button. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to let you in on me trying out some cold showers. I actually recorded it, and I can tell you I've taken much colder showers than the one that's on this audio recording, and I find it very invigorating. No, I have not done it every single day. I'm in the middle of winter here, and then some days I struggle with getting up to it, but I can tell you every single time I do it, I'm like, wow, that is refreshing. So enjoy this little experiment with some feedback for you, and I look forward to bringing you more insights to fuel a life worth living in episode 9. Thank you. All right, Callen, I've been giving this a shot now a couple times, and this morning the water is extra cold. It's freezing outside. It's about 25 degrees. And I just stuck a thermometer to the water itself, and it was about 50 degrees. So here we go, stepping in. One thing that is hard to describe is how hard it is to get a full breath. When you're the benefit right now is that I just worked out, so it's kind of counteracting it, but Callen, thanks for this insight. You have invigorated my morning, and I hope you invigorate a couple of other people's lives.